Just prior to the American Revolution, the mantra of the day was against taxation without representation. This is bad. It set up a system of de facto slavery in which goods were taken to Britain without the colonists' say on what went on. This is unfair to the productive class, and causes resentment among people. In the case of the American Revolution, it caused a civil war which ended in the birth of a new nation. In the case of the French Revolution, it caused the purging of the aristocracy and the dissolution of the French government, paving the way for Napoleon to take power. Today, we have the opposite. Welfare cases have the vote, but do not contribute to the society. Since these people make up a good portion of the population, we have another problem with similar results. This time, it is representation without taxation. This, in my opinion, is even worse. Not only do the productive members of society lose their say in what happens, it dooms the country to a slow death by socialism. This is causing class warfare, people segregating into particular groups in this race to become the most oppressed, in order to extract more goods from the general population, and disincentivizing people from being productive. There is a parable I sometimes use when discussing representation to socialists. It goes like this: a certain man named Fred gets a raise at his job, and so he decides to celebrate by treating his friends to dinner. Fred invites them over and they start driving. Along the way, he suggests taking them to a burger joint. They protest, and demand to be taken to a steakhouse. Unable to come to an agreement, they decide to vote on it, and majority rules, so they go to the expensive steakhouse. When they get there, they sit down, and Fred's friends invite the waiting staff, government workers, to come and eat with them. Then, they invite some bums on the street, immigrants, to come in and have the steak dinner, all on Fred's dime. After additional protests, they vote again, and go ahead and invite the workers and the foreigners to eat steak with him. By this time, Fred is getting furious, so they call him names, and take his wallet. Because they voted on it, this is fine, because majority rules, right? When putting it on an individual level, of course this sounds absurd. Fred's friends have no moral right to his money, whether they vote on it or not. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among these are life, liberty, and property. To take these away from someone without just cause is thievery. This was outlined in the U.S. Declaration of Independence in a preliminary version based on the Virginia Declaration of Rights drafted by George Mason as follows: that all men are born equally free and independent, and have certain inherent natural rights, of which they cannot, by any compact, deprive or divest their posterity, among which are, the enjoyment of life and liberty, with the means of acquiring and possessing property, and pursuing and obtaining happiness and safety. Due to the existence of slavery at the time, the final wording was changed to the pursuit of happiness to allow for this immoral and hypocritical caveat. If a person is able to vote for the personal acquisition of another's wealth, is not that just as immoral as someone providing a job to someone, picking cotton for instance? But then taking 90% of the wealth. Slavery is institutionalized thievery, not unlike communism. Socialism is just a watered-down version in which wealth is taken and redistributed in a manner to provide politicians maximum power through the vote of the flocks of sheeple out there. In order to turn this around, to keep the government from going to the inevitable slide towards communism, representation needs to remain in the hands of those who are paying the bills. Therefore, I propose looking at a person's tax and the welfare benefits he or she receives. If their taxes are more than their welfare benefits, they have the right to vote. If we were to go to this system, people would still be charitable, but welfare benefits would decrease. This would slow the increase in debt, and reverse the march toward communism. Eventually, as debt is paid off, we would have a more prosperous nation overall. The welfare cases, of course, would be unhappy from the changes. Social Security pensioners would be unhappy to lose the vote, but I guarantee you they would be happier with losing the vote than they would be with a societal collapse and reset, which appears we are headed for unless we have a major change in our current course. You may think people would eliminate any ability for the poor to survive, but that is not true. In the absence of forced redistribution of wealth, People are quite charitable. Until the 1930s, welfare was nearly entirely provided for by private donations. Coincidentally, the introduction of the welfare state came along as the same time of the greatest economic disaster our nation has ever seen. Conclusion: the natural order of things is for those who supply the goods are the ones in authority. If you are a father with a family to take care of, you are the one who should be with the authority. If you are the company owner who makes payroll for the employees, you are the one who should be in authority. Government should not be any different. If you are the one paying the bills, you should be the one making the decisions. Doing anything different is allowing others to steal from you, and will eventually lead to the destruction of the entire system.